So the Borderlands movie came out and everyone loved it. At least if you're Randy Pitchford. It's taken me a little while to get here, especially since I went to an early screening, but better I got to talking about this movie late than never. I don't want to say that watching this put me into a depression, but it certainly didn't help. The movie was originally announced in August of 2015, 4 years before Borderlands 3 was even announced. It actually came off the heels of Tales from the Borderlands, which was the franchise's first true venture into a predominantly narrative product. That's not to put down Borderlands 2 in any way. If anything, it's the opposite, and hailed as, perhaps not one of the greatest video game stories ever told, but one of the best video game antagonists ever created in Handsome Jack. The series was definitely at a high point with its popularity, and considering that they were branching out with spin-offs like the pre-sequel and licensing out their IP to Telltale, it's no surprise that talks for a movie were in discussion around this time as well. But you know what else was popping around this time? Marvel was definitely in the midst of hitting its stride. They became the go-to example of what it meant to make a modern science fiction movie. One good story was able to skyrocket even the most mundane of characters into absolute stardom. But the one title I dare say changed the course of history in cinema moving forward was Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, I don't work in Hollywood, but even I could tell you that 9 times out of 10, studios are always going to bet on a proven model. Take whatever property is already popular and sells well and make another version of that, whether it be continuously making movies of the same characters or turning anime or video games into live action. It's always the incredibly profitable brands that'll get turned into something else. But Guardians of the Galaxy took a group of completely unknown characters in the public conscience and made them superstars. It's not that Guardians of the Galaxy itself is the problem, but it created a brand new blueprint. It gave everyone the idea that they too could take any random group of ragtag characters and throw them together into a team, and the formula would do its magic and you'd get a successful movie. The superhero influence is precisely why the likes of Avi and Ari Arad were brought on to produce the Borderlands films, as they had a hand in a lot of previous superhero movies. Only a handful of the MCU at the time, but pretty much every other superhero movie prior probably had their name attached in some way. Point is, they had a lot of experience with the type of blueprint Lionsgate were looking to capture. But for the longest time, news surrounding this movie went dark. Years would pass without ever even hearing a peep. But around 2020, some more information began to come out specifically about those working on it. Eli Roth was slated to direct it. Personally, I had no opinion one way or the other about this. Going through his IMDb, I haven't seen any of his movies, so I couldn't say if this was a good thing or a bad thing. But I was fine with giving people a chance. But we'll come back to him in a second. Another name tied to it was that of Craig Mazin. At the time, he was mostly associated with comedies like Scary Movie 3 and 4 and the last 2 Hangover films. While I don't know for sure, I would take a guess that this was the reason he was brought on, just solely judging based on the tone this movie went for. It's kinda hard to say considering the Borderlands movie was in limbo for 9 years, cause a lot can happen within then. And it did. Craig Mazin went on to write critically acclaimed dramas like Chernobyl and the Last of Us series. Now all of a sudden, his name is carrying a lot of weight behind the products he was involved in writing, which is probably why he left the Borderlands movie and took his name off of it completely. Articles began coming out towards the release detailing how he was no longer credited as a writer, and instead it was being attributed to someone named Joe Crombie. Most people suspected that this was a pseudonym not to attach his name to the product. He would later deny this and say that it wasn't him, and when people began asking who Joe Crombie was, Randy Pitchford just said it was someone named Joseph Crombie. Yeah, that was the confusing part. I guess he's real, but it's his first writing credit, which is probably not the best thing they could have done. Believe it's a real person or a pseudonym or not, it seems like the script was more impossible to crack open than an Iridian vault itself, literally. According to Randy, there were like 20 different people who helped write this thing, and that's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, which is not a good thing. And in 2019, the screenplay actually leaked, and in hindsight, Not much actually changed from the original idea. A legendary thief named Lilith will be the protagonist in a new story that will include instantly recognizable faces like fan favorite Claptrap. The movie will find Lilith in the Atlas Corporation space prison when the CEO gives her a chance to earn her freedom by rescuing his daughter, the foul-mouthed Tiny Tina, on the planet of Pandora. The mission takes an unexpected turn when it becomes clear that the little girl is the key to unlocking a valuable alien vault that Atlas wants all for himself. Joining her on the adventure is the previously mentioned Claptrap, Tina's bodyguard Krieg, and a group of unspecified vault hunters. And aside from Lilith starting in the Atlas prison, that is the synopsis of what happens in the movie. And even back then, fans were definitely not thrilled over what they were hearing. But the crux of where things seem to have gone wrong is Eli Roth as its co-writer and director. Being the man in charge, everything was ultimately at the whim of his vision, and it largely explains how we got one of the most controversial aspects coming into this movie, the cast. Based on how he speaks about it, Eli Roth's casting choices seemed less about Borderlands and more about people he wanted to work with. By the time the wheels of this poop train had gotten rolling, COVID had happened, meaning everyone was locked in their house and becoming a little stir-crazy to go out and do something. Insert Cate Blanchett. She was the first actor approached to take up the role of the main character Lilith. Eli and her had previously worked together on The House with the Clock in its Walls, and not only did she want to get out of the house and Eli wanted to work with her again, but she was also actor bait. Quite literally. In an interview with Moviefone, he said, "Once you have Cate, she's actor bait. Everyone wants to work with Cate." And that's how we wound up with Jack Black and Jamie Lee Curtis joining the project swiftly after. Jack, too, he had worked with prior on the exact same film, but Jamie fell for the bait hook, line, and sinker.
I was all in, honestly, all in at Cate. And Kevin wasn't cast yet. So it was Cate. It was just Cate when I first heard about it. And I was like, yes, I will go to Budapest and make a movie with Cate Blanchett because she's just an extraordinary actress.
And while I couldn't find as many articles of Kevin Hart's reasoning for joining the project, I imagine by this point he was similarly lured in by the other big names. And it's these four, I'd say, is where the biggest surrounding controversy lied in their casting. Cate and Jamie were significantly older than their video game counterparts, and Kevin much shorter. It seemed like we weren't exactly going for accuracy, but genuinely, I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. These are accomplished actors at the end of the day. Now, I'm going to hold off on talking about each of their individual performances until later on in the video, but in hindsight, this was truly a representation for why things went wrong. It's not just the fact that their ages are different, but when you go through and watch any interviews done for this movie, you'll notice how almost every single thing they have to say is about the cast. I don't expect any of the actors to be yapping on about the games, but you'd expect a little something more from Eli Roth. But in every interview, he's always talking about the cast and the actors themselves.
It's so incredible. It's the greatest cast I've certainly ever worked with. One of the greatest casts ever assembled, period.
Place to be. I got the luckiest, the best cast I ever worked with.
I love a cast where you go, wait, what? And then you watch them together and go, yeah, this makes perfect sense.
But when he does talk about the games, he never brings up the characters, the story, the lore. It's always the vibe of the world.
Well, I wanted to stay true to the spirit of the game, which is fun and silliness and anarchy and no rules and total craziness.
And he was always trying to distance it from the game, saying it's its own thing. But the biggest red flag he could have said was to turn off your brain.
I'd say shut your brain off, grab your popcorn, and let the movie entertain you.
That's spoken like someone who knows it provides nothing of value and has not even surface level depth. So signs were not looking good coming into this. It was clear that this movie was meant to be its own thing and stand on its own two legs, so I wasn't expecting the main story or the characters and their stories to be the same because it was evident from the cast that it couldn't. It's more than just bringing in characters like Tina and Krieg who are from the second game, but someone like Tina just straight up didn't exist in the story. So it's obvious that we're coming into this changing things around. But the setup is kinda interesting. Initially, it's the same as the game. The movie opens up talking about the Iridians and how they used to inhabit the galaxy ages ago before disappearing completely and leaving their greatest secrets behind in a vault on Pandora. It kinda makes it sound like there's only one vault, which makes it kinda rough on Randy Pitchford's Borderlands cinematic universe idea. But I digress. She talks about the megacorporations, bandits, and vault hunters all coming to the planet in search of it, ruining things and making it very lawless and dangerous. But of course, no one was able to find it. You know, all the normal stuff. But then it throws in this new concept of a prophecy, which doesn't make much sense.
A prophecy that one day a daughter of Iridia would open the vault and restore order to the broken planet.
So the prophecy details that a daughter of Iridia, that's new, kinda just throws that at you and expects you to pick up on it as if that makes sense. But it says this chosen one is going to open the vault and bring peace to Pandora. But what kind of prophecy is that? Pandora only became shit from all of the people looking for the vault. So why would a prophecy detail someone needing to bring peace to the planet for a problem it created? Vaults are just like big treasure chests. Why complicate it with a prophecy? So the movie immediately opens up on a scene that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We come out the gate swinging. Roland shows up to save Tina. He tells her that her dad sent him there to rescue her.
And Atlas, he sent me to bring you to safety.
My dad sent you.
That's right.
Okay, let's go.
So the two have to fight their way through the facility. The problem is, this is an Atlas facility? Roland is fighting Atlas soldiers, which inherently is fine because I assume this is his defection from the corporation. He's turning on them, he's taking Tina, and he's bouncing. But in turn, the excuse of, your dad sent me here to rescue you, isn't now in any way believable because she's still in an Atlas base. This is theoretically where she's always been, and as we would later learn, she doesn't exactly like her dad, for reasons such as always being locked up, for example. So saying her dad sent him should be a red flag, as it is later on in the movie when Lilith says it. That is, unless she actually was captured and he is there to save her. But then the setting and the people he's fighting against don't make any sense. So both things cannot coexist at the same time, but they do. I can only imagine that based on the original synopsis that this was supposed to be Lilith, and she was the one that was supposed to be locked up and fighting all of these Atlas soldiers before she was detained yet again and made a proposition to find Tina because of how capable she is. Because that makes a lot more sense than what we got here. So as they're fighting all of these soldiers, Krieg breaks through his jail cell cause it's convenient, and he begins protecting Tina. There's no explanation as to why. They seem to know each other.
Krieg, what's up, man? Pancakes.
But then that begs the question, how? If she's Atlas's daughter in this movie, then she didn't grow up on Pandora and would never have been able to meet Krieg naturally, meaning they must have met while imprisoned, but the set doesn't exactly indicate that they're given the prisoner's rec time, so how did they meet? We'll never know, because the movie never goes into it. Krieg from this point on is just there. He has absolutely no story or motivation whatsoever. We are then introduced to our second main antagonist, Commander Knox. If you've played the game, then you'd know that there is a General Knox who also worked for Atlas. He was very entertaining as he was suicidally depressed due to the sheer incompetence of the military. And I could confidently say he'd still feel that way looking at how Atlas is here as well. Knox is taken out by a very casual throw. Roland says sorry to her, you know, to build history, and he, Tina, and Krieg all escape together. So the opening scene is not great. We then cut to Promethea, where our main protagonist Lilith is hauling in a bounty because she's a bounty hunter. She's not a siren like she is in the games when we first meet her, so she's working this job. After getting pestered by some Atlas goons and killing them, she's approached by Atlas himself, sorta, who wants to hire her to find his daughter. She rightfully asks why he can't use his army, and he says it's because she was taken by someone who used to be Crimson Lance and he needs someone who knows the planet.
Unfortunately, the kidnapper is one of them. I need an outsider.
Except, that doesn't make sense and is not even true. Firstly, what does Roland having to be ex-Crimson Lance have to do with anything? You can't use your entire army because one soldier defected. It's not like he took a large portion of followers with him or anything. He took Tina and ran. Just him. So because he used to work for you, now you're hiring a bounty hunter in the stead of an entire military force? But secondly, it's not even true. The Crimson Lance is on the planet. He sent them there to recover his daughter, and he even hired psychos as well, which makes even less sense. For someone who holds irreplaceable value to him, he sure is making as many people possible aware of her existence who do not work for him and cannot be trusted. I get it, he's the bad guy, maybe he lied to Lilith about the reason he needs her, but at that point, why mention it? Why not just say that Lilith's track record is flawless and that's why he wants to hire her? Why say he can't use his army, he needs someone who knows the planet, cause he doesn't. So Lilith accepts the job for a boatload of money and we get a montage of her asking around and dealing with the local psychos. Tina and Roland were last seen headed to Firestone, so she gets on a bus driven by none other than Marcus. He's played by Benjamin Byron Davis, and I gotta give credit where credit is due. He's not in much of the movie, but he embodies the role really well. He looks the part, and most shockingly of all, he sounds just like the original.
My name is Marcus. You're not here for small talk. You are here to find the vault.
If you had told me that this was the voice actor for the games and I didn't know any better, I would have believed you. Unfortunately, this scene is another representation of the bigger flaw when it came to the direction of this film. Per usual, Marcus is welcoming her as a vault hunter. But time and time again, as this film loves to make clear, Lilith is not a vault hunter.
Not a vault hunter, but
Then welcome aboard.
not a vault hunter. Not a vault hunter. Really? I am not a...
It may come as a shock to Borderlands fans to hear this, but there are no vault hunters in this movie. Not a single character is inherently interested in hunting a vault. The whole thing that makes a vault hunter is that's what they choose to do. They had a dream of finding a fable. Most typically were driven by the fame and glory, or they had the ego to think that they were just that guy and they could do it. But none of the characters in this movie are coming into this wanting to hunt a vault. And that's not good. So Lilith is dropped off at Firestone. Recognize it? It looks just like the games. It has such iconic buildings as trash. We're here for all of 1 minute before Lilith says, 2 weeks in and I couldn't find her.
2 weeks on the trail, and it was as cold as Pandora's moons.
Like they really just said, here's some fan service, it's not even good. So as Lilith makes camp for the night, we are introduced to Jack Black's Claptrap. From a design standpoint, they definitely nailed his look, no complaints whatsoever. Did they need to hire Jack Black? Absolutely not. I think it's an unnecessary layer of unfamiliarity for, realistically, no reason. It's not as if he brings a whole lot to the role other than his name, but obviously everyone could see that that was the whole purpose of this cast. It's not a bad performance, I mind you, it's a little weird, and I don't know what he's doing with his voice and accent.
I'm a Hyperion brand CL4P-TP, possibly the last of my kind still in service.
But it's not the problem with his character. He does have the most comedic presence compared to the others, but not by much. Anyway, despite not wanting his assistance, Claptrap's access to the EchoNet gives him the ability to track Tina's last location. She's at where she is in the game, the Tundra Express.
Your target was last recorded near an abandoned quarry in the Tundra Express.
Can't you tell? The Tundra Express? The Tundra? A word used to specifically describe the coldest of all biomes? And express because of the mission that involved a train? It looks just like it. I need to put on a coat, you could just tell how chilly it is. After heading inside, Lilith does in fact find Tina. She tells her that her dad sent her to rescue her, and we get this awkward scene where she asks her to grab her badonkadonk.
Can you grab my badonkadonk?
You what now?
Now, I'm not really here to give a harsh analysis to the comedy of this movie. Comedy is subjective. Some would say the Borderlands games are not and were never funny. Others would say that they are gut-busting hilarious. That's not the point. But this moment in particular hit extremely differently for something that was going out of its way to be a reference to the games that I just had to figure out why it didn't work. And I think it's because it calls too much attention to it. She says it, Lilith has a reaction, and it's a whole bit. But in the games, it flows so much more smoothly because she just says it.
This here's Mushy Snuggle Bites, and this is Felicia's Sexo Pants. These fine-ass women's could stop that train for us, but I'ma need their badonkadonks first, and they got stole by the bandits a few days ago. Go get them!
No attention is called to it, and it's presented as if it's just the way she speaks, which it is. So it wasn't trying to hit you over the head trying to be a thing. But also, the badonkadonks in the games are rockets for her plushes. It's their booty.
That's Mushy Snuggle Bites badonkadonk. She's my main squeeze. Lady's got a gut full of dynamite and a booty like...
But when she says it in the movie, she says my badonkadonk, which comes off as asking Lilith to grope her, which is a lot more awkward than funny. I just had to analyze that scene specifically because it did not work on so many levels. So yes, her badonkadonk is actually an explosive, and she lures Lilith into a trap. And when she threatens to take her in by force, Krieg is called forth to defend her. The fight's as good as you'd expect from a PG-13 duel between two main characters where none of them can get hurt or die. Meaning it's a whole lot of running around, swinging, and shooting at each other where none of them land a single blow. Ultimately, Lilith's able to finesse her way to Tina at gunpoint. That's when Commander Knox and the Crimson Lance show up, saying she's the one taking her in. Yeah, her and what army? No, literally, they say that.
You in what army?
The one right behind me.
Tina interjects and says that she'll put in a good word for both of them, and Knox is just like, yeah, sure. But Tina pulls one over on her and gives her an explosive bunny, leading her to throw it away, causing this whole collapse. Roland shows up to save her, and Tina, for whatever reason, just grabs Lilith and brings her along, like things are chill between them all of a sudden.
It's okay, he's with me.
Wish I wasn't.
But it's like, why would she do this? She came into this a bounty hunter looking to bring her back to her father. Tina just tried to kill her moments ago and was holding her at bazooka point because she didn't want to go back. Her and Knox just agreed to bring her in together. At no point did the dynamic and motivation change that would lead Tina to come around and trust her. It makes no sense why she did it, and it upsets me. We get a completely unremarkable car chase scene. It's not fun action-wise, the CG's not great, the car's not even in the game. Like, Lilith drove an Outrunner for a little bit, but the staple car of this movie is just like a minivan with armor plating. The characters eventually get away, and it's revealed to Lilith what's been going on. It's revealed Tina's importance as she's the daughter of Iridia.
My daddy thinks I'm the daughter of Iridia. I can open the vault.
Lilith's lack of siren powers is because she's presented as the special one throughout the movie. Roland and the others are looking to open the vault, not because they're interested of what's inside, but because they're good people who have a conscience, and they need to keep it out of Atlas's hands. I'm not joking.
We have something they don't, baby girl.
Conscience. Whatever's in that vault, a man like Atlas can never get his hands on.
Calm down, okay?
They don't even need to, realistically. They have Tina, so all they should be doing is protecting her. But for whatever reason, they're going through all the hard parts of tracking down the keys that no one has gathered, all to open it. I guess so they can be like, oh, well, now you can't have it. So Lilith winds up saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, so they're stuck together.
I'm as good as dead. So like it or not, we're on the same side.
But even that's not true. Only Lilith is shit out of luck if they don't team up. They don't know her, they don't have to trust her, their hand is not forced in this scenario. But they agree anyway. To figure out where to go to next, they make their way to Sanctuary to find Tanis. Sanctuary definitely is the best set in the movie. I even love how they implemented the customizable heads. I think that is a great way to implement something from the games in a very natural way. To find Tanis, they stop by Moxie's, who is played by Gina Gershon. Moxie's once again one of those phenomenal characters in the game who you do not get any sense of in the movie. She doesn't have a big role in this, I mind you, because of what it's trying to do with Lilith and her story. Moxie is mainly here to add the faintest of backstory and history, being like, I knew your mom and you in the past. And that's it.
Your mama was a good woman. Yeah, well, wouldn't know.
The only other thing she does is tell everyone where Tanis is, and that's fine, she's an information broker, but in turn, you would expect the rest of the empty space she has to showcase her personality as a character. And one of the most entertaining things about her is her sexuality, her ability to flirt and manipulate people in a provocative way that gets her what she ultimately wants. But surprisingly, she only does 2 sexual things. She's kinda handsy with Roland and Krieg, and makes a single innuendo.
And a tip is always appreciated.
But all of her dialogue when she's talking is completely void of her charm. Half of it is spent talking to Lilith, so she can't flirt with her because she knew her when she was a kid, so I guess that'd be weird, even though I think Moxie would still do that. And her only other scene is when Nox comes back suspecting her of hiding everyone. But the manner in which she responds is painfully generic.
You don't think the second I saw her, I wouldn't hand her right over to you just to get rid of you?
Like any character in the history of fiction could be placed here and say that exact thing. It's not unique to her. It's such nothing dialogue, it's upsetting. If you ask me, she should have flirted with Nox in this scene, because it's already so agonizingly boring that having Moxie seduce and fluster her would have at least benefited both of their characters. It would have been more true to Moxie, and given levity to Nox as a character. But it doesn't. Moxie comes and goes without even any pleasure out of it. Anyway, back to the story. Our characters eventually meet up with Tanis, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, and it's evident that there's bad history between her and Lilith. By that I mean Tanis had apparently sold Lilith when she was a kid so she could continue her mother's research. Since then, she's held a grudge and is yet again not interested in sticking around. We then get a scene between Lilith and Tina where she goes on to explain her origin and special nature. But where things begin to go terribly wrong is when Tina breaks down.
Then he's just gonna lock me up into another secret lab. And if you saw the things they did to the other clones...
I'm sorry, did I hear that right? Clones? Yes, if there's any representation of what's wrong with this entire movie, let it be this. Not only is it contradictory to itself as a movie, because remember, at the start when Roland said Atlas sent him there to save her...
And Atlas, he sent me to bring you to safety.
My dad sent you.
That's right.
Well, if these are her feelings, that shouldn't have been her reaction. It simultaneously comes out of nowhere and doesn't improve anything. She spends most of her on-screen time even after this espousing how she's the chosen one, but it loses all of its uniqueness by admitting she's not one of a kind, which goes against the whole point of being a chosen one. If it really wanted to hammer home this idea of there being other clones of her, the least it could have done was have the silhouettes in the beginning of this movie when Roland was breaking her out at least semi-match her in size and shape or something, because instead the other prisoners we saw were psychos, and it doesn't make any sense for Atlas to have kept this vital, integral piece of opening the vault in the same area he's keeping common psychos. But instead, they just drop this clone plot point out of thin air, and it doesn't even help the story going forward. It doesn't lead to anything. It's so random. So, as I mentioned, Nox comes by and they spot Claptrap forcing everyone to flee. I may as well mention it here, but Larry, a character I haven't mentioned played by Bobby Lee, just disappears. He was in 2 scenes, including this one. The movie promoted him as a character, and even he didn't know why.
Honestly, I'm in such little, I'm not in the movie that much, so it's like I don't even know why I'm here. So when you asked me this question, I was like, I don't know, you know what I mean? I have like 2 lines or whatever, you know what I mean? But
like if you were to guess, how much screen time do you have?
If I counted, maybe 2 minutes.
Okay.
And he was right. He's not in this movie hardly at all. It's an even bigger question because he just disappears. He doesn't show up in the final fight scene when everyone from Atlas is there, or at any point. He's just gone. This is the last thing he says.
Hey, that's his robot. It's an old CL4P.
Excuse me, coming through.
So fortunately, Tanis was able to locate the second piece of the vault key, which is located in Caustic Caverns, which fortunately, unlike the Tundra Express, is much more causticy and caverny. I don't think there's much to say. It's largely an action sequence. It's the first time in the movie the characters get to go against hordes of enemies, making it probably the best fight scene the movie has to offer. But that's not saying much. It's still largely uninspired and uncreative. Firstly, no one has an action skill, making the uniqueness of combat the characters usually have less definable. Roland doesn't have his Scorpio turret, Lilith isn't a siren, Tannis and Tina don't really do anything and are not fighters, but fortunately Krieg does use his buzz axe instead of a gun, which inherently is his action skill and makes the sequence much more entertaining. But even in the aspects that they could have gotten creative in, the facet Borderlands is synonymous with, their guns, they don't. Lilith spins them around, which is unique, but they're just pistols, and Roland carries his same SMG the entire time. They could have at least been picking up unique weapons as they were going around the facility and shooting them. There's no elemental guns, there's no unique bullet spread, there's no weapon gimmicks like Atlas's targeting system or guns with legs running around shooting things. There's not a single gimmick Borderlands is known for with their weapons present at all. Lilith picks up a flamethrower, but it's just a fucking flamethrower. It's not like it overheats and explodes or does anything special. It's boring. And to even add on to the stupidity of the weapon usage, we reach this point in which they are getting overrun and there are too many enemies, and Lilith is shooting them with her pistol. But Lilith's pistol, as they establish, is the Infinity.
Nice try, Miss Vladoff Infinity. I never forget a gun.
And for those who haven't played the game, it's a gun with infinite bullets. It's inherently genius to use it for this film because you never have to worry about the main character reloading. You can do these long action sequences where they're just blasting the entire time. But then you reach a problem like this, where their backs are against the wall and Lilith isn't just holding the trigger. You're throwing in these 1 to 2 bullets sporadically, which makes her use of the gun look stupid. And that general sense of ammo conservation wouldn't have been a problem if the movie itself didn't establish her gun as the Infinity. That's a writing problem, and not a nerd knows too much about the game and is being picky problem. So they're getting overrun and the elevator isn't working, leading to Roland choosing to stay behind to get everyone else to safety. Tina's like, "No, you can't," and it tries to be emotional, I think.
Roland? Hey, Tina. I'll meet you at the vault. I promise.
And then you get this whole slow motion sequence where he's shooting the psychos and he's taken down. Oh my god, he's dead. The others are saved when the elevator they're on goes haywire and they accidentally phase walk, leading Tina to think that she saved the day. They find shelter in a cave and Tannis reveals the location of the vault and the fact that they've collected all of the pieces to open it. All 2 bits to the physical key, one of which we started with, and Tina, as you need a daughter of Iridia to open it. But then it's revealed that Tina might be used as a sacrifice to open the vault. Lilith's not exactly keen on sacrificing her, but Tannis finds it no other way. Anyway, Claptrap fixes the device Atlas gave her to call him once she found his daughter, and unfortunately, he wound up clicking it. An Atlas drone comes by, and Lilith tries to play the whole thing off because she doesn't want to hand Tina over.
This thing was junk the whole time.
And I don't know what it is about Atlas's dialogue here, but it feels like kids playing pretend and doing improv, and he's the asshole who's just like, "Nuh-uh, my thing was super awesome and 100% accurate and nothing could have possibly gone wrong. So I win and you lose."
Not at all. There was a highly accurate tracking device that has led me right to you and Tina.
So basically, he says he's coming. She can't destroy the key or he'll kill them all. And so they'll just continue as originally planned and he'll pay her once he gets his daughter back. But the tail end of their conversation was witnessed by Tina, who feels betrayed and throws a bomb at her, leaving her unconscious. She and the others head for the vault while Lilith wakes up alone with Claptrap. He tells her how they took a truck from the village and Lilith's like, "What village?" And wouldn't you know it, it's her childhood home. We get a few flashbacks of psychos raiding the place and her being put into the care of Tannis, but then we get the moment I lost complete respect for this entire thing. We get a Star Wars. I don't think there's any other way to explain it. This was the moment it became clear that they just wanted to make their own bootleg bullshit. Not even their own original movie. They just wanted to copy what other movies did more successfully and copy and paste it into a worse film so Eli Roth could blow $100 million so he could pal around in Budapest with a bunch of A-list actors, and Randy Pitchford could satiate his ego by seeing characters from his franchise on the big screen, no matter how much of a disservice it does to them. It was already evident that they were trying to do a Guardians of the Galaxy, but this is like, is there even an excuse? I get that Borderlands is very referential and makes a lot of jokes about pop culture, but those things are always side pieces and never part of the main story. So even if they were trying to be tongue-in-cheek with, oh haha Star Wars reference, it's too much of a big scene to just be a reference. So back with the others, they make their way to the vault, which is located here in this canyon. A very just normal canyon. You know, in the games, there are typically these enemies called Guardians present, which are there to guard the vault. It's not one for one the exact reason the vaults are so difficult to open, but at least they add to the danger in which finding one would entail. But I guess not here, just literally a thing on the ground. They insert the vault key and Tina stands on top of it, but unsurprisingly, nothing happens. She's not the daughter of Iridia, even though she was still grown out of a lab from Iridian blood and is a clone, which is still fucking crazy. But she can't open the vault, which is the important part. Atlas and all of his men arrive, as well as Crom, this normal-looking guy who they decided to take the design of Mouthpiece from Borderlands 3. At that point, just call him Mouthpiece. Being Crom has no effect on this movie's story whatsoever. I guarantee he was only named Crom because he was in Borderlands 1, and that's the story that they're pulling from. But half of this main cast and most of the NPCs' designs are all taken from later entries anyway, so it's not like that's important. Also, why is Atlas showing up with a bunch of psychos and bandits? He's the CEO of a mega corporation and literally has his own army, and he came here with like half a dozen of his men and a fuck ton of psychos. Oh, well, the psychos are the recognizable mascots. Yeah, we'll write a better fucking story about how the psychos got here. Anyway, so Roland comes back and literally no one expresses any emotion to his survival whatsoever. They all just kind of look at him. Atlas orders everyone to kill them all and capture Tina so they can harvest her organs. But out of thin air, Nox intervenes to protect them, and then this happens.
Roland, you were right. I should have...
Like, what the actual fuck are we doing here? You're just here to waste our time and money, huh? Firstly, what do you mean, Roland, you were right? The scene pretends as if the two have been interacting this entire time, when in reality, the only moment they shared on screen was in the beginning, when she was unconscious. And this is all he said to her.
Sorry, Nox.
So what do you mean, Roland, you were right? Like, what is this, a social experiment? So then Lilith shows up and reveals that she's actually the daughter of Iridia in the most obvious twist of the 21st century.
Daughter of Iridia, baby! Bet you didn't see that coming! Ha ha!
No claptrap, everyone saw that coming. So, in the most untrustworthy agreement, Lilith opens the vault to protect everyone. When she does, she turns into the Firehawk. A fight ensues, and it sucks. I don't know what to tell you. Lilith uses her powers and puts this, like, shield on everyone, making them invincible, something she can't do in the game. But secondly, where is the fun in making the characters unable to take damage? I get that it's the final fight, and I guess they wanted it to be triumphant, but genuinely, I feel like invincibility, even in video games, is a mechanic that's only fun for the person who has it. Meaning, watching someone be invincible, especially in the context of a movie, isn't really fun, and strips what little stakes there already are. It's not like this movie needed it. As many people have criticized, being a PG-13 rating, there's a notable lack of blood and gore. So it's not as if everyone's getting shot and cut up. Every encounter, at most, has left them slightly dirty. So we never needed this invincibility spell, that's not even in her skill tree anyway, just for some unfunny moments. It doesn't last long as Atlas keeps shooting her with his ship until she eventually destroys it. He winds up taking Tina hostage and forces Lilith to take him inside of the vault. And what's inside of the vault, you ask? A bunch of floating cubes. Yep, that's it. That's the ultimate alien treasure we've been after. Geometry. Lilith does this spooky thing where she's zipping around all over the place, and then she says this.
I have something that a man like you will never have. Enough.
I was genuinely perplexed when she said this, and I didn't even know why at the time. But now, upon rewatch, I've realized it's supposed to be that point in the movie when the hero learns from their avarice, allowing them to triumph, while the villain doesn't, ultimately leading to their downfall. But the reason I was so confused when she said it is because it implies it was a common theme for her character throughout the film. That up until this point, she has been driven by money, power, or some other selfish desire. But now she's realized she doesn't need it. But that's not what was happening. She was a bounty hunter who accepted a job to find Atlas's daughter, but like 30 minutes into the movie, she gives up on it and teams up with the others. And that's even before hearing Tina's sad backstory. At no point is she looking to deceive the others so she can turn her into Atlas. Is she looking to use her for herself so she can open the vault and claim the treasure inside? She may be complaining a lot throughout the movie, but she's pretty much been on the morally good side of everything she's been doing, which ironically doesn't fit Borderlands. In the games, Roland is the guiding beacon of morality, but everyone else is pretty greedy in some sense. And in this movie, they definitely swapped Roland and Lilith's roles as she's the one that forms an emotional bond with Tina, but still, she would have been a better character in this movie if she were greedy throughout it. But she wasn't, so her saying this doesn't make sense. Tina breaks free and the two leave as Atlas is taken by a tentacle monster. What do they leave with? Absolutely nothing. There's no treasure, there's no loot, there's no vault monster fight. This is as if Borderlands 1 ended when Steel got impaled and the credits just rolled. Like, where's the Borderlands? How does one approve this movie and decide there were going to be no vault hunters, there is nothing of value in the vault, there is no loot, and there is no vault monster? How can the inside of the vault be as dry as a decrepit nun? And then the film has the audacity to end on another Guardians of the Galaxy fireworks show, as if they earned it. There's Scooter and Ellie for anyone wanting to see them. They don't talk, but there they are. Apparently Pickle's in this movie somewhere, but I didn't spot him. Now, I'm not done talking about this just yet because I did want to talk about the cast. And the thing is, they are not what's wrong with this movie. Casting different actors would not have saved it. For the most part, the majority of them are fine in their role acting-wise, except Edgar Ramirez as Atlas. It's a pretty terrible performance. The largest faults lie in the writing and characterization more than anything else. Jamie Lee Curtis as Tannis doesn't exactly do much. If anything, she's too personable for who Tannis is. Jamie's version is more socially awkward, whereas I would say the original has more of a disdain for social interactions. Florian as Krieg, I think, is physically everything you want him to be. The only downside to his performance is that it sounds like every single one of his lines were ADR'd.
It's time to go insane! 13 showers! Nobody kills me but me!
It doesn't sound like any of them were live, so they all sound weird. Ariana Greenblatt's portrayal as Tina is more difficult to judge. Tina is a very animated character, and those don't always translate well into live action, like, say, Ed from Cowboy Bebop. Plus, not only is Ashley Birch so synonymous with Tina, but Tina was already inspired and based on her own character and performance in Hey Ash, What You Playin'?
That game actually did a lot of really interesting things.
Your mom did a lot of interesting things.
We have the same...
My dick.
So this is the first time someone else is delivering a performance as Tina. And in that regard, it's not that it's bad, but it's just not Tina. Part of the problem is that apparently she was described to her as a kid version of Harley Quinn.
And the first things he said was like, go like if she's the kid version of Harley Quinn.
It explains why she does a lot of flips and acrobatics. The downside to this is that's a really poor way to describe Tina because she's not like Harley Quinn. It sounds strange, but if you think about it, Tina kinda is the embodiment of 2012 humor. If you weren't there, you don't get it. But just how comedy was back then is a more accurate way to describe her sense of humor. Whereas a character, she's just a traumatized kid. And that's all she ever was. Her popularity may have skyrocketed because players found her funny and entertaining and whatnot, but what made her special are none of what this movie tries to change. People didn't have an interest in Tina because she was some chosen one who was the key to opening a vault, or because she was a clone and a daughter of Iridia. Literally, she was just a girl who was traumatized because her parents were sold off for human experimentation. And she used a grenade to escape. That's why she's so obsessed with explosions. But in this movie, because it changes her backstory, there's no reason or explanation as to why she's so obsessed with explosions. There was a layer of tragedy and depth to her backstory in the games that formed her character. But here, it quite literally is treated as just a personality quirk. They blew her backstory and origin completely out of proportion that no one watching could possibly empathize or care. Which is easier to sympathize with, being a clone created from the blood of an ancient alien goddess, or watching your parents die? You don't need this grandiose sci-fi plot to have a grounded character. And in that regard, the movie also changes her relationship with Roland in place of Lilith. And in the same vein, it complicates things for the worse. It's one of those incredibly generic stories where Lilith is extremely hesitant at first. She doesn't exactly like Tina, but then she sees the moral injustice occurring and vows to help her out. But in the game, it's Roland who looks out for her because she's just a kid. There was no ulterior motive that went on with Roland meeting Tina. He quite frankly saw someone who needed someone. So he was able to be that friend, that ally, that father figure that he recognized she needed in her life. But in the movie, Roland only saves Tina because it was Tannis's plan and she wants to open the vault. So Roland's only using Tina and constantly berates her like an angry father instead of the calming one he usually is. But I'll get to Kevin Hart's Roland in a second. Tina is such a great and complex character, but the movie completely strips her of it and just makes her quirky girl who loves tea parties and explosions. And the same goes with Krieg. At no point do we get the psycho with a conscience. We never hear his inner dialogue, and thus we never get a sense of the struggle for control that he's constantly battling over. So instead, he's just a guy in a psycho suit who says weird stuff. And if the audience doesn't know his character, they're just gonna see his dialogue as trying to be funny by being random. Then there was Claptrap. I've seen a lot of people who've reviewed this movie and even played the games casually say that he's the most faithful. But when I see that and they say that, I see they mean it in the sense that he's the annoying mascot character. So as long as he fulfills his role as annoying mascot, it's true to the game. But that's simply not true. Claptrap in this movie is such a fundamentally different character, it doesn't resemble the charm of the original. The best way I feel like I can describe his character from the game is egotistically depressed, but with an optimistic tone of voice that he cannot change. Claptrap has an ego much larger than it has any right to be given how terrible he is at things, and it's because of that he is shunned by others and is depressed and lonely. So he's always trying to make friends with new people, still with the ego calling them his minion and whatnot, and it's that constant trying to make friends that's integral to his character, which is why in Borderlands 2, when you wake up, he's happy that you're not dead, because now he might have some new friends.
Wait a minute! You're not dead! Yes!
But in this movie, he's so antagonistic towards Lilith. He doesn't want to be there. He goes so far as to celebrate when he thinks that she died.
I'm dancing because you're alive. Not because I thought you were dead.
And in reality, Claptrap would be happy that she's not dead, mostly for his own selfish reasons. But wanting you dead is not something Claptrap ever wants, and that's all he is in this movie. So yeah, he is still the annoying comic relief mascot, but in no resemblance to the original. Now, realistically, I think the only two casting choices that were really going to affect this movie were Cate Blanchett as Lilith and Kevin Hart as Roland. Now, believe it or not, Cate Blanchett does a fine job as Lilith. There was a lot of talk about the age of many of the cast members. Cate is in her mid-50s, Jamie is in her mid-60s, and Gina is in her 60s as well. But realistically, Tanis's age has nothing to do with her character. Plus, this movie does try to do something with it, as she's supposed to be around the age of Lilith's mother. So there's a reason for her being on the older side of things. And Moxie has two fully grown children. She's not exactly young. She's realistically probably in her 40s or 50s, and the same logic applies to this movie as well. Moxie was another character that apparently knew Lilith when she was a kid, making her someone who's supposed to be older in this. But Cate as Lilith is where there is a slight problem. Now let me say, she pulls off the general vibe of Lilith really well. If you were to compare all of the actors' portrayals to their video game counterparts, Cate might be the most faithful to the original. The only problem is that Lilith's vibe is that of a girl in her early 20s. Her age in this is such an awkward thing because we're starting her hero's journey at such a late point in her life. She opens up already feeling like she's too old for this shit.
I'm getting too old for this shit.
While her true story hasn't even started. She at times with Tanis specifically sulks around and has this attitude befitting of a young 20-year-old having a bit of angst. Not so much someone in their 50s. And her age simultaneously makes it an awkward point for her history on the planet because Cate and Jamie are relatively close in age. But the movie would try and have me believe that they are much further apart than they actually are. I think it's a testament to her acting ability that she was only hindered by something she has no control over. If they wanted Cate as the main character, just change the story. It didn't have to be Borderlands 1. Then there is Roland, and from the jump, he is the single most confusing actor to cast. Despite what the majority of the public say, being short isn't the foremost problem when it comes to portraying him. Kevin Hart is a funny man. Borderlands is a comedic franchise. It seems like something that he should effortlessly slip into quite naturally. But Roland is not a funny character. In fact, he might be the only character who is completely void of comedy. He makes up for it in many ways, being the Captain America-esque symbol of honor and leadership, but the point is, comedy is nowhere in Roland's characteristics. So if Kevin Hart wanted to deliver the most accurate performance he possibly could, he could not make a single joke the entire movie. He couldn't be funny, he couldn't try to make the audience laugh. So, what happened?
God damn! There's no air holes in there. What a stupid helmet. Shortest order to save his least funny daughter. Big stormtrooper ass bitch. P. It's P. Now I got P all in the middle of my truck. You get a bullet, you get a bullet, run from.
Yeah, so quite frequently he is trying to be funny. And that's why casting Kevin Hart was the problem, because now you end up with the worst of both worlds. It's a bad and unfaithful portrayal of Roland, and he's not funny enough for general audiences. I can't tell you how many reviews I've seen for this that say Kevin Hart isn't funny enough because they don't know that his character isn't supposed to be funny. And that's why casting him was the problem. It comes with a preset expectation that you have to avoid. So even people unfamiliar with the franchise are walking away unsatisfied because it tried to split the difference between what you expect out of Kevin Hart and who Roland is. Now, honestly, I don't think Kevin Hart is actually to blame here. Believe it or not, I have no problem assuming that actors are willing to act. Yeah, he may not exactly be the first choice I would go with for an accurate portrayal of Roland, but I doubt the last thing he wants in his life is to be the man chihuahua in every single project he's ever a part of. Everyone wants to be the cool guy. Everyone wants to be the soldier that shoots down armies single-handedly. So why wouldn't he take the role seriously? In fact, Kevin probably gives the most accurate description of his characters than the other actors.
Roland is a guy who has a narrative attached to an agenda of good. And his agenda of good comes from once upon a time being a part of something that wasn't so good, that he felt that he had to detach from because of where his life has taken him. And in this new place of living, in this new place of life, there's a found respect for the place of Pandora and for the things that possibly could be attached in it or to it, where he can be a part of the conversation of making better, of making things good. And, you know, when there's a reason to hold on and care, he shows true heart. He shows a side of humanity that I think grounds this space.
That is Roland. He described Roland to a T. Say he got lucky and pulled that shit out of his ass with his media training or whatever. I don't care. If he was going into the role with that mentality for the character, it was the correct one. So what went wrong? By the sounds of it, Randy Pitchford is what went wrong. Blinded by the Hollywood glitz and glamour of celebrities, he was excited to be working with all these big names, all these people he was familiar with. And in an interview with Polygon, Randy was complimenting all of the cast, and when he got to Kevin Hart, he said he crushed it. If anything, I was like, man, we got Kevin. I kinda do want to throw them a couple gags. Because he plays the straight man in the movie. And he did do a couple gags. But he was like, no, I want to be a pure action hero. But I was like, dude, it's Kevin Hart. Come on, we gotta give him a couple. So Kevin Hart wanted to play it 100% straight, as Roland is. But Randy's own fanboyism actively ran interference and just typecast him once again into playing the man chihuahua. Never would I have thought that Kevin Hart would have a better understanding of Roland than Randy Pitchford. Like, this is your product. Where's the creative integrity to keep your own characters true? So as you can tell, the casting wasn't ideal, but it was far from the problem compared to the people in charge. So at the end of the day, believe it or not, the actors weren't really what was wrong with this movie. It's not only unfaithful to the source material, but even on its own two legs it sucks. And that's unfortunate because Borderlands is filled with so many amazing characters and interesting stories, both old and new, just waiting to be told. It's not as if the games are contained in such a tight-knit box. The universe is so diverse and just waiting for someone creative to do something with and not suck. But yes, those were my thoughts on the Borderlands movie. I would ask what you guys thought about it, but I'm pretty sure I know what the entire world thought about it. Any and all thoughts, let me know in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you're interested in more Borderlands content, and until next time, I'll see you in the next video.